Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the optional memorial of St. Mary Major. St. Mary Major is one of the major basilicas in Rome. Did you know that? There are major basilicas and minor basilicas. So in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, don't we have the Cathedral Basilica of St. Peter and Paul? That's a minor basilica, right? In Rome, they're the major basilicas, like St. Mary Major, John Lateran, St. Paul's outside the walls, St. Peter's. So this St. Mary Major is one of the major basilicas in the city of Rome, close to the Vatican, and St. Paul's is outside the limits of Rome, but considered, of course, because of Paul, considered one of the major basilicas. So they're the connection to the Holy Father and the mission of the church. That's why the name Basilica is given to some churches, like the major ones in Rome, and like the minor ones all throughout the world. The Holy Father gives the title for its connection to the mission of the Holy Father. A, if the Pope visited the place. B, what the cathedral really actually does and promotes the gospel of Jesus Christ. And C, how it's faithful to the magisterium. And so the Holy Father will say, you know, this cathedral should be named a basilica. And so the word basilica, I just want you to know, is a connection to the mission of the Holy Father. There's an endearment to the working of the church and St. Peter's successor, the Pope. Okay? So how about our cathedral? We're the Cathedral Basilica of Saints Peter and Paul. And why not should we be a basilica? I think the Archdiocese of Philadelphia since 1808, right? 1808 to now, we've been doing a lot of good work, especially faithful to the magisterium, faithful to the Holy Father, faithful, of course, above all, to Jesus Christ and the mission of the gospel. Well, anyway, thanks for listening to the series on marriage. I think we have really done a good job talking about that, haven't we? You and me. I thank you for your comments and your love. I feel the love and your consideration and sometimes even your questions. So thank you for listening to that series of Holy Matrimony. It's nice to go through a piece by piece, don't you think? Because we get better in tune with it. Because you and I could go to a wedding and we could sit in church for the wedding, and a lot of that stuff is passing us by. You know why we're excited for the couple? We're looking at the couple, the bridal party, and some of the prayers, it's just buzzing us by. It's not like we're not grabbing onto them and we're not really digesting them. And even the goods of marriage. Remember I said that the spiritual goods of marriage, how they're woven throughout the whole ceremony, even the nuptial blessing. So remember the questioning before the consent, and then the consent or the vows, then the exchange of rings, and then that beautiful nuptial blessing that happens after the Our Father. Next time when you're at a wedding, I want you to train your ears to be attuned to the spiritual goods of marriage and to see what the church is asking the couple to do in the name of Christ. Christ calling them to that particular vocation to lead a life to reflect Christ's marriage to the church. Because Christ is the groom and the church is the bride. And he is wedded to us in an unbreakable bond. Hey, did you know that that's why the bishop wears a ring too? He's wedded to the diocese. Did you know that? So the bishop will wear a ring. And I know we've seen bishops wear rings, don't you? Sometimes we used to kiss the ring and when we saw a bishop. Today, I don't know, they got out of that habit of doing that. Whether or not that's good or bad, or whatever your opinion on it is. But it's not about the bishop. So let's clear our head about that. It's not about, oh, you're kissing the bishop's ring, you shouldn't be doing that. It's not about kissing the bishop's ring. It's about kissing the nuptial between Christ and his church. And see, I guess, just like me when I was a kid, that was never explained to us. But that's what it is. It's the nuptial of Christ and his church as it is personified by the bishop. Because the bishop is the teacher of the diocese. The bishop he has the governance of the diocese. It's the bishop's job to make sure the diocese remains holy with Christ. So he embodies Christ, of course, among us. And how beautiful that is, that the bishop is wedded to the diocese, to the people of the diocese. So there's a nuptial going on there. That's why the bishop wears a ring. I just thought I'd throw that out to you. I hope you get that. So never think like, oh, I'm not going to kiss a bishop's ring. I mean, who do you think he is? Stop it. It's not about that. It's not about that. It's about Christ. It's always about Christ. And it's about Christ, of course, in the person of the bishop or the priest. This is like when people say to me, or to you probably more, you know, why should I confess to a priest? And you're going to say to them, because you're not. Christ is in that sacrament, and you're confessing to Christ, and he has called the priest to stand in his person. You're confessing to Jesus. Yes, he uses me as an instrument to give his grace and his mercy, of course, but you're confessing to Jesus. So I always say to people, and I hope you do too, I'm not confessing to no man. And you and I will say, absolutely not. You're not confessing to any man. You're confessing to Jesus Christ. Well, then what are you talking about with confession? Well, because who do you think is in the confessional? Christ. Oh, you may see a priest, but Jesus uses the disguise of the priest to bring about this great work. Doesn't Jesus use the disguise of bread and wine? Come on. This is no new theology we're telling you. This has been around since 30 AD to the present day. This is not new stuff. We have to get bold. We have to get courageous. We have to speak and defend the truth of the gospel and the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Okay? That's what it's all about. It's not about your opinion, my opinion, this one's opinion, that's one's opinion. That's not the church. The church has a voice, and it must be clearly spoken. I had a beautiful call this afternoon of a parishioner, and her mom was just put on hospice, and she wanted to know, you know, what was morally acceptable. Isn't that beautiful? She wanted to know what Christ has to say about this. Christ says so much, we have to have ears to hear it. And she called, and I was talking to her. You know, I love when you guys call me, and I love when you email me and ask me questions, and we have a chance to talk. I love when you ask for me to give the sacraments to maybe a dying relative. Now that you know about the last rites and the anointing of the sick, you know how efficacious they are. Thanks for allowing me to come into your lives and be an instrument of Jesus for you. I truly appreciate that. You're not bothering me. Don't ever think you're bothering me. That's my vocation. I'm an essential worker. You know, for Christ. I'm an essential worker for Christ. And, you know, I'm a first responder in the spiritual life. You know, I am a first responder. I have to get there. But I want you to call me a little bit in advance. Don't call me at the last minute. Call me a little bit ahead of time, because I want to make sure I'm there before mom or dad dies. Making sure they receive the last sacraments, right? It's important. It's important. Did you tell your children that you want to have the sacraments before you die? Did you tell your children that you want a Catholic funeral mass? Did you tell your children that you want to be buried in a Catholic cemetery, or have a priest present at a non-Catholic cemetery? Because I can bless the grave, you know. I just came back from a funeral this morning from my next door neighbor from Southwest Philly. They called me back and they asked me if I would celebrate the funeral. And I remember this woman so dearly, and I spoke, of course, of her fondly in the homily, and I just said how beautiful she was, because she always used to say, Father, you're my priest. Make sure you bury me. I have a lot of people that say that, and that's beautiful, and I hope I can if I'm able to. But please don't hold it against me if something happens. I was nervous because last night we had that storm, and at the residence our electricity went out, so Father Keen and I were roughing it for a little bit for 24 hours. I mean, God bless our missionaries who really are roughing it. But anyway, I called the funeral home and I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this funeral because I don't know if the roads are clear. So Father Keen left the house before me, and he says, listen, Father Bellopede, I'm going to text you, and if I get through, I'll text you that you're able to go to the funeral. So he texts me, and after the morning mass at 9 o'clock, I went right to Delaware County, celebrated the funeral mass, went to St. Peter and Paul Cemetery, said the prayers at the graveside, and was back, and here I am, able to talk to you. So all beautiful, beautiful gifts of grace that God bestows on me and you for allowing us to be his instruments of grace. So I hope and I pray that you really want a priest to give you last rites. I hope and pray that you want a funeral mass. I hope and pray you want a prayers at the graveside for when you are buried. I absolutely would love that. I know Christ would love it even more. And for me, absolutely, I want it for myself. I want the graces of the sacraments and the graces of Mass. It was interesting. The sacristan said to me today, do you want to, not Peggy, the sacristan at the church, that I went to, do you want incensation? And I said, yes, twice, at the offertory and at the final commendation. And he looked at me like, the final commendation? Yeah, it's the prayers at the end. I'll talk to you about that later. I said, that's important. The souls of the just are in the hand of God, and our prayers are like incense that goes right to God. It's a fragrant offering. And I said to him, yes, twice. I said, I hope that when it's our time to go to God, that we take care and much attention to the Mass, our funeral Mass, because this Mass will be the last one that we are celebrating while that person lies in state in front of us, right? And then they go off to God. The final commendation is praying that the soul then, it's a beautiful climax of the funeral liturgy. You've seen the final commendation, right? Mass is complete, right? The distribution of Holy Communion is given, and then the prayer after communion is prayed. Then the priest goes at the foot of the casket and he prays to God that soul is with him. And do you ever hear the cantor sing it's called the Song of Farewell? Did you know that? It's the Song of Farewell. Receive her soul and present her to God the Most High. Beautiful. Angels of God, the martyrs, present the soul to God the Most High. Could you imagine the angels, the saints, and the martyrs taking the soul to God and presenting this soul back to God? And the priest is incensing. As the smoke of the incense is rising, so the soul is going to God. But we have a lot to talk about. Well, anyway, I concluded the series on marriage, and tomorrow we're going to talk more specifically about divorce and annulment. And I want to say that because it's real. It's very real. We don't hope for divorce. We don't wish divorce, but it happens. Because sometimes people cannot live in that state of matrimony all the days of their life. Maybe they thought they could, or maybe one of the goods of marriage was broken. And maybe the whole marriage covenant was fractured. It's interesting what the church says about annulments, and we'll get into that a little later, because there's a difference between divorce and a declaration of nullity. You know, when I perform a ceremony or the mass of marriage, the nuptial ceremony, the nuptial mass, I both represent the state and the church, right? I give you a legal license and I give you a sacramental certificate, right? Divorce has to do everything with the state. The state of Pennsylvania gave you a license to be married, etc., etc. They also are the ones who have to issue the divorce. The church does not do that. But in order to get a declaration of nullity, you first need to be divorced. You first have to see if you are divorced from your obligations of a married couple by the state. Now, there's a lot to talk about, because what happens when a person divorces? You know, they have the decree of divorce, right? It's a legal kind of document, right? And it tells about money, children. There's a lot of things that go involved in the decree of divorce. But I have to tell you one thing. You're still married in the eyes of God, right? So you may be divorced from the state obligation, but you are still married in the eyes of God. And until the church investigates why that covenant of matrimony is no longer going to be viable for you, you're still married. That's why you can't date. Because you may think to yourself, Father, we're divorced. I know you're divorced. But your vows are still binding. See, divorce has nothing to do with the sacrament. Did you know that? Divorce has nothing to do with the sacrament. The sacrament is still intact. Yeah, but we're not living together. We're not living as a married couple. I know. You're divorced. However, sacramentally, you are still married. Well, how do we rectify that, Father? How do we, investigate the marriage covenant? Well, that's a very good question. We need to talk about that. We need to talk about the seriousness of the declaration of nullity, which says that the sacrament is now declared null and void. And then I'm going to talk to you about children, because people get all upset about well, what about the children involved? We'll talk about all of that, okay? If you have any questions, write them down or email them to us, and I'll make sure that I answer them. Because you know why? I don't know if I'm missing something that you want me to say, but I have to hear from you so that I could address it, okay? And I'll do that in this next portion, hopefully maybe 2 or 3 sessions on just divorce and the declaration of nullity. All right? So today on this feast, or this optional memorial, see, there I go again, feast. See, we use that word generically, don't we? It's just a generic word, feast. But liturgically, it does have a rank. I know you know, but you know me, I like to tell you anyway. On this optional memorial of the dedication of the Basilica of St. Mary Major. Have you ever been there? I have. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Basilica. Now, before I close, because I love to talk about all this. Before I close, they're not cathedrals. Like, how we're a cathedral and we have a bishop, and then, in Rome, they have basilicas. But there's one basilica in Rome that's the diocesan cathedral. And it's not St. Peter's at the Vatican. It's the Lateran Basilica of St. John the Baptist. That's the Pope's. You know how the Pope is the Bishop of Rome? You know how Archbishop Nelson Perez is the Archbishop of Philadelphia? Well, for the Diocese of Rome, who's the bishop of that diocese? Francis. You mean Francis is the Pope and a bishop of that diocese? Yes. Yes. He's a bishop. And he's also the Pope. So not only does he have to take care of the entire church, but he has his own diocese to take care of. Now, maybe later I'll tell you how that all works. I just love all this stuff. I'd like to talk to you about it. All right? All right. Well, enjoy this optional memorial of the Basilica of St. Mary Major, dedicated to the Mother of God. And also to understand, I said at Mass this morning, what this whole memorial tells us is that, number one, Jesus is concerned about our discipleship. He loves his mother, but all of us are called by him to follow him each and every day of our life. Because in the gospel today it says, hey, blessed is the mother who nursed you and who bore you. How blessed that woman is. And Jesus says, yes, but wait. How blessed are those who hear the word of God and observe it. Not dissing his mother, but saying, wait a minute. All of us share in this birth, in this nursing. How do we share in the nursing? Well, we need to give good food to our people. The Catholic faith. That's the good food. The food of the Eucharist, the food of the sacraments. That's how we nurse them. Blessed are those, and how do we give birth? We give birth by having our babies baptized. Having them baptized and giving them the right food. Remember the side of Christ? Water and blood. The church gives birth in the font of baptism and feeds us with the food of the Eucharist. Don't you love this? I get renewed just talking to you about this stuff. All right, everybody. Enjoy this beautiful day. I'll see you tomorrow.